Joe, Notre Dame comes down south to the great state of Texas and takes on the Aggies, a Jimbo-less Aggies, is pretty much that's been the entire conversation this entire offseason. You want to hear something funny because you know how big of a narcissist I can be at times? People, at least that's what people tell me. Do you want to know how many bullet points that I have in this Notre Dame Texas A&M game? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10 bullet points going.
You better not read all 10 of those. You better absolutely not.
But I'm going to kick it off to you first because I'm sure you're going to hit on a lot of them. Your thoughts on Notre Dame going down south and taking on Texas A&M?
So first of all, as I said in the open, I think that there's a lot of uncertainty for knowing how good Texas A&M is going to be in this game. If it plays out as anyone would anticipate, first game for a new head coach, there's going to be growing pains. It's going to be a little bit of a slow getting to know them type of a process. Your first game is not going to be your best performance. That could end up biting them in the ass in this situation. They are favored by 3 points, but if this was on a neutral field, that line would look differently because of the home field.
No, it's basically a pick'em.
Right. It's basically a pick'em. I don't think that it should be. I think that what's really going to be critical is the battle between Notre Dame's offensive line and Texas A&M's defensive line. Anthony Knapp is projected to start at left tackle for Notre Dame. He is a true freshman. That is very serious because I have hyped up Nick Scourton to be one of the most unbelievably talented players in the country. He's going to go on to be a top 5 pick potentially in this upcoming draft. I'm less worried, though, than I think you would expect, and I don't think Notre Dame fans should be totally worried, and here's why. Last year, we had perfect examples of how Mike Denbrock knows how to scheme protection, and the ball gets out really quick in his offense. If that offense looks similar, and there's not any drastic changes, which I doubt that there will be, I think that there is going to be an emphasis on trying to get the ball out quickly to prevent any situations where he's facing pressure. That was one, Riley Leonard's facing pressure. That was one of their biggest issues last year, was that Sam Hartman would sit, no one would get open, hold the ball too long, he's not very mobile, and then he would take a hit, he would take a sack, he would turn the ball over. That's not going to happen with Riley Leonard. And then the other part of this too, the last thing for me, is can Notre Dame's secondary turn over Connor Weigman, and can they lock down Texas A&M's receivers? I think that they have an underrated receiver room, but there is a potential that secondary for Notre Dame is going to be able to generate some pass breakups and then maybe an interception that could sway the game in their direction.
I'm going to push back on one itsy-bitsy thing.
Okay.
Denbrock can get in a rhythm where he's not getting the ball out quickly. If you don't believe me, just ask Jaden Daniels. So, but the situation changes because of the offensive line. Joe, I do feel like that there's going to be a little bit of a filling out process early in this game, right? Like I think that there's going to be, punches thrown back and forth because I do think that they're going to come out there a little bit conservative, meaning Notre Dame to start off, try to run the football, establish the run. Because, look, you do have an offensive line that not only is brand new, but you have Jagasol that went down at left tackle, and you have a really good Texas A&M defensive line. Look, man, Nick Scourton, the Shamar twins, which is what I'm going to call them, and Turner and Stewart. Okay, Joe, that's a really good defensive front. Here's the thing that I think is interesting about Notre Dame's offense versus A&M's defense. You have 3 new starters in that secondary if you're Texas A&M. You have Des Ricks, you have Will Lee, and you have Trey Jones that are all new portal guys that are coming in that secondary. How cohesive can those 3 guys be necessarily when they come in and play one another? But I want to throw it to the other side of things that I think is actually going to be a bigger tell in this game too. I don't know if A&M can stop the interior defensive line of Notre Dame with Howard Cross. Yeah. So I think you have 2 defenses that have a lot of talent. That, Joe, early in this game, it could be a slugfest, and I think it's going to be an outright war on both lines of scrimmage. The question that I start asking is, Joe, if they start to get Riley Leonard in the running game, then how does that affect things? Another question I have, though, is do you protect him because he was injured and you don't, you want to protect him too to some extent?
Yeah, you can't come into this game, though, with that mentality. If he's healthy, you got to – he's got plenty of time to recover after this game. I know that's a weird mentality.
He had a setback. So, I mean, like, those are questions that all offensive coordinators are going to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, what's so wild to me is that this game is pretty much a pick 'em, and it really on paper shouldn't. I thought that the point that you made to end your part of what you thought of the game was very key. Connor Weigman has never seen a defense like this. And we haven't seen Connor Weigman for what it's worth. And let me say this too. I think Connor Weigman is very talented. Can we see him play it through a whole year before we anoint him as a really good quarterback? Look, he went into that Miami.
Fair point.
We went into that Miami game and he had multiple turnovers and they lost. Like, he had very critical turnovers against a Miami team last year that also wasn't really good. Joe, you just have so many things that you're having to figure out if you're Texas A&M and having to replace that I think at the end of it, when the fourth quarter, I think Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman, it being a third year, they may figure it out and lean on their defense. It's not missed upon me, though. There's a lot of things that Notre Dame's got to figure out offensively, too. Your 1,300-yard rusher and Audric Estime is not there anymore. You have a brand-new quarterback who did not go through spring. Joe, I think we're going to have a game midway into the fourth quarter, and I think the only thing that I feel like here is that Notre Dame just makes the last stop, and that's what prevails them to win. But, man, here's the final point that I'll say, and I know that you're going to laugh at me on this. You cannot be in a slugfest with Texas A&M in the fourth quarter at that place when shit gets rocking. Do you remember Rocky II? Do you remember the movie Rocky II?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So remember in the final round when Apollo Creed's trainer was like, stop trading punches with him. You're going to lose. Stop trading punches with him. You're going to win the fight. Stay away. Go through your game plan. That's how I feel like Notre Dame has to go amongst this. Go to your game plan. Lean on your talent. Lean on your philosophy. You'll win this football game. But if you go in there trying to slug this one out in that home stadium, you're going to find yourself getting upset. So I'm just going to throw this out there. Do not underestimate the outright weird stuff that when those male cheerleaders, Joe, come out there, woo, woo, shit gets weird. I'm telling you. But that's how I feel like this game's going to go. It's going to be so close in a slugfest between two really talented teams.
Well, that was really, really beautiful what you just did. I think, though, that what's different this year for Notre Dame, though, is, you brought in a far more competent play caller than you've had in a long time. This is the best play caller that you could have for this upcoming first game of the season. I really think that we're going to see a night and day different offense for Notre Dame. I think that the just general explosiveness is going to be witnessed, and a lot of doubters, I think, are going to be silenced. Maybe I'm putting too much stock in Denbrock, but there's a lot of speed, man. There is a lot more speed than people realize. Jeremiah Love is very fast. This receiver room, I saw some 40-yard dash times for these guys. Most of them are in the 4.4s or lower. There is a very fast group, and Mike Denbrock knows how to use those types of receivers.
The only thing that I'll say with Mike, and I love him. Look, I love Mike more than a lot of people. Mike will tell you in early seasons with new quarterbacks, they're going to come out running the football. So they might have better weapons on the outside than they have had in the past. I'm not trying to spoil anything here, brother. It would not surprise me if Mike came out, meaning Denbrock, anyway. It wouldn't surprise me if he does some little trickery in the beginning of the game.
Yeah, he should.
However, Joe, did you see him going up against this A&M defense? Like, the last game that he's called was against A&M. Now, I know it's a completely different staff. I know it's a completely different situation. Joe, he kind of got out schemed a little in the first half, right? And I love Mike.
Well, wait, but he got
out schemed.
Yeah, but who was the they were going against Texas A&M as a different coaching staff, though. Like, I don't know if that's a good example.
I understand that, but I'm just saying. I love Mike to death, but sometimes he gets a little stubborn in what he wants to do.
Well, great. I want to bring this up too.
Okay.
One thing we didn't talk about at all in the Texas A&M preview. Jay Bateman as the defensive coordinator hire for Texas A&M, I don't think got enough criticism, especially from us. I think he's an okay defensive coordinator. It felt like a completely just like tertiary decision.
You know who's calling that defense. You know who's calling that defense. Don't.
Do we know that for certain? Do we know that Elco's calling that defense?
Joe.
I'm not going to say that with such certainty when that hasn't been clarified.
It's not missed upon me that Mike Elco's DC went to Georgia Tech and put on a performance like they did this week. That's not missed on me now.
Yeah, I wonder why he didn't come to Texas A&M. I don't know.
Elco's calling plays, man. He's going to be very involved.
Has that been reported anywhere?
Joe, you're looking at this as a fan. You know, good guy.
I'm not looking at this as a fan. I'm looking at this as as someone who's analyzing this game. It has not been reported, okay. So I don't know who is calling the defensive plays.
Honest question: do you really think that Mike Elco, at the bare minimum, is not going to be more hands-on defensively?
Was he calling the plays at Duke? I don't know off the top of my head. Was he calling plays at
a play sheet?
I don't know if that we can say that with such certainty that he calls the plays for Texas A&M. I don't know about that. But they're going to need Elco to call the plays, though, because again, I don't think that Jay Bateman's a very, very good defensive coordinator. He was very mediocre calling the plays for North Carolina a couple of years ago.
I think you're reading way too much into that.
That's important. That's incredibly important.
No, because here's what Joe.
Give me Mike Denbrock over Jay Bateman in that matchup.
Yeah, very, very fair. But here's what I know about Mike Denbrock. He will tell you right now. Do you want his phone number? I'll send it to you. He will tell you that Mike Elco, because of the connections that they have with the coaching staffs that they've been on, there's nobody that he respects more than Elco. Nobody.
Yeah. I also to that point to kind of shift the direction of this a little bit. It is also to Texas A&M's benefit significantly Elco's familiarity with Riley Leonard. I think Riley Leonard, having gone up against his scheme in practice every day, is going to help him a little bit. But a guy in his 50s who recruited the kid is going to know how to work against him much more effectively than the quarterback is in that dynamic.
Yeah. I think that he can, because he'll know what Riley does and doesn't like.
Yeah. He's gonna know what leads to his mistakes. He's gonna know what coverages are gonna cause him to get confused. Yeah.
Right. Look, here's another thing let's lean in on this quarterback thing. Mm-hmm. I like Riley Leonard. I think that he is a very talented and very gifted athlete, and he can do some amazing things with the football in his hand. However, Joe, I do think if I'm Elco, I'm coming out trying to make you one-dimensional. I think Elco needs to come out there and make Riley Leonard beat them with his throwing the football. Like, you got to come out and sell out and stopping the run.
Okay, I'm going to sit here and tell you right now, that's not going to work, because when Notre Dame played Riley Leonard and they tried to literally do that, Riley Leonard said, okay, bet, I'm just going to beat you with my legs. That's what Haynes King just did the other day. I don't know. I think that he's a different type of athlete. And
you came in the injury and said Haynes King didn't do anything special with running for 50 yards, and you're going to say
no. Hold on. Do not misquote me like that. I said as a passer, he didn't have any like super crazy take over the game type plays, but as a runner, he was fantastic.
20-yard ball that led to a score. Yeah, he did.
I'm talking about as a passer. He misfired on a number of throws, but we're not.
He fired a pass over the middle that converted, and they scored on that drive too.
That's one throw. He also threw a million screens and short passes, and then missed through a number of wide open guys that could have been huge. Are you talking about DJU,
or are you talking about Haynes King?
I'm talking about Haynes King. He had a great game, but as a passer, he was a little bit average.
Passes. He was 11 of 16.
He was 11. He threw 16 passes. That's not that. That's
70%.
That's 16 passes is minuscule for the typical amount of production 70%. That we see.
It's still 70%. Can I say this and you're going to get pissed off, but I'm going to be honest.
Probably.
Okay. I think there's a little bit too much of people not like really looking into a play caller and a quarterback in a game one type of situation. Joe, this is not a Notre Dame thing. This is a football thing. There have been many, and I mean many quarterbacks and coaches, when they come together for the first time in a real game, there are struggles in the beginning, in game ones.
Boy, can't the same thing be said for Texas A&M, though?
Very much true. That's why I try to ask you about the quarterback thing. The only difference that I would say with Weigman is Weigman's been with his offensive line and his receivers. So the connection is still there. There's not going to be a misconnection when it comes to him not knowing his receivers. Now, here's another part, too, that we hadn't talked about. Reuben Owens is not going to be in this game, and I fear for A&M running the football, if I'm being honest. I really think that interior defensive line of Notre Dame is going to kill them.
They seem that right now that they might end up being a little thin at running back. I think Le'Veon Moss was listed as the current starter. They also have Emmitt Smith's son is the third back, so that's kind of where their depth leads. But yeah, if you pull up their depth chart on our lads, they've got three new guys that were transfers that are just completely new faces. Their center. Oh no, two new guys. Their center and their right tackle are new players. Chase Pasantis is a good guard that they have. I think though that yes, that is very true. That's where I feel that Notre Dame has the best matchup to win this game. If I'm comparing whose offensive line is most favored or whose defensive line is most favored best to win the matchup against the opposing offensive line, I think Notre Dame's in the run game is the most favored.
I'll push back on one thing. I'm going to disagree with you here. Notre Dame's going to have to prove that they can stop that pass rush.
Yeah, and that's easier said than done.
And Absolutely. That's easier said than done. Listen now, we've gone about 15 minutes maybe in this segment. I don't know how long we've been in this segment, and we hadn't talked about Nick Scourton. Okay? Now, here's the thing now. We keep talking about Riley Leonard and miscues and all this kind of stuff. What takes away the running game more than anything is unrivaling pressure that gets on the quarterback. This Jigsaw thing is a big deal. Like it keeps Jagasaw, excuse me. Sorry. Jagasaw, Hagasaw, it doesn't, who gives a saw? It could lead to Joe, we're projecting him as the best edge rusher in the SEC against a first-time starter that you did not want to go into the season as your left tackle. That's going to present problems.
It's going to present problems, and I think that is going to be an extremely critical matchup in this game is how does Knapp hold up against him? Again, I'm not saying this as if I think it's going to be completely resolved and won't be an issue for Notre Dame, but I do have like a little bit of faith that Denbrock is smart enough, unlike past offensive coordinators, the past two guys that Notre Dame has had, in trying to scheme against pressure and good pass rushers.
What does he call if his tackles are bad?
I think that they're going to need to rely on a lot of chips. I don't think that both tackles are going to be bad. And I don't think that Anthony Knapp is going to be bad. He's just a true freshman, which is brutal situation to step into.
So what do you call when your offensive line is going?
I am chipping with the tight end as much as possible, and I am deliberately calling as many passing plays to get the ball out as quickly as possible. I am trying to avoid as many third and longs as I can. That has to be the approach. And look, Riley Leonard probably doesn't have the same type of deep ball that Jaden Daniels had last year, that they're going to be able to connect on those types of throws.
He doesn't have the running ability of Jaden Daniels either.
Obviously, Jaden Daniels is a 4.3 athlete. That's not exactly an accomplishable goal, but he's also a 4.5 athlete that is a phenomenal rusher. I think, though, that they need to be very deliberate in getting the ball out quick, and if they can do that and they can accomplish that and they can avoid those third and long situations where Nick Scourton can pin his ears back and just completely go unhinged after Knapp and whoever he's going up against, that's going to be that's going to be, I think, really, really key for Notre Dame in this game.
One last thing. I know you're going to snark at it. It is what it is. The humidity is going to be 100% on Saturday.
What's the full weather? College Station.
You Northerners be playing. Oh, it's hot.
Oh, it's supposed to rain. It's supposed to rain.
Oh, y'all are fucked.
90 degrees and rain. Well, it's also a night game, too. We got to take that into account.
Thank you. Night game in A&M with humidity and rain. Okay, thank you. If I'm A&M, thank you.
I don't know. I'm not gonna.
If y'all start off 0-1,
I am not a meteorologist. Not a weather analyst.
Swear to God, I'm coming in here and making fun of you. All right, let's get to this last game.
Wait, who's your pick?
Notre Dame. I already told you, Notre Dame by 3.
Oh, I'm proud of you.
Well, let me say this. I haven't officially put it down on paper. That comes on Wednesday.
Okay.
If you're asking me right now, if you've put a gun to my head and said Blake choose, I'm going to say Notre Dame by 3. I just think they have too much talent at the end. But you know what scares me about this is much more people that are better at betting than I am are taking A&M, and I think that there's got to be something to be said in that. So we'll see. But I mean, clearly, I'm not picking against Mike Denbrock. It's just not. I'm not going to do it.
Okay, good. I'm proud of you. This video is sponsored by the online fitness training camp presented by Chris Gates Fitness. When I first started talking about Chris, about partnering with our show, not only was I excited to have a fitness sponsor for our pod, but more importantly, when I found out about how he can help people achieve their goals, I was even more bought in, because when the football season starts, it is so tough to stay on top of things and also to be able to enjoy yourself on Saturdays when it's game day. With Chris Gates Fitness's online training camp, you're going to be able to effectively stay focused, consistent, burn fat, build muscle, and do it with a like-minded community of individuals working towards the same thing. On top of this, you're going to be able to get direct coaching from Chris and the ability to ask him questions with an access to a live Q&A where you can get direct, personalized support from Chris himself. Don't wait any longer. If you're trying to get in shape during this fall and you want to be able to do it with the right support system, head on over to chrisgatesfitness.com/training camp or click the link in the description. And you need to do it today because you can get the first month. Personal training is expensive, folks. The first month for only $10 when you use that code RuffinoJoe. Don't wait any longer. Head on over there. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.